the Irrational Confidence Podcast. The top 25.
Honorable mention.
Just a bit outside. This is the Washington Huskies. Played for a national title last year.
This is going to be a lot of new names for all of us to learn. I think they're still bowl eligible. I think 6-6. I think.
And I'm going to really hate to say this. I think their worst case scenario is 5-7 and miss a bowl game. One of the newest members of the Big Ten. Interesting to say that phrase right there. They also played for a national title last year, and all sorts of crazy broke out with them. They got a new coach, Jedd Fisch. He's come from Arizona, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Washington Huskies. Kalen DeBoer took the Alabama job. Michael Penix Jr. is gone. So many of their skill players are gone. So many of their defenders are gone. They brought some guys in the transfer portal. I don't know. You tell me, what are you making out of the Huskies? Hard team to read.
I mean, it's a very hard team to read. You can't say there's no talent because there were guys that were on the 2 deep last year who are coming back. Not everyone got drafted. So they're going to have some guys there, but it's a completely different philosophy. And I think it's actually going to test them to see how really good those players are, because now the expectation is last year y'all played for a national championship and you were a very good football team. And it was more than just Penix, the 3 receivers, Dylan Johnson, Rose Garden tackle, and, Braylon Trice off the edge and a couple other guys. It was a full, 2, in some cases 3 deep at every position contributing. So now where are you rising up and taking that and becoming the leadership factor of this football team? Last year the Pac-12 was really good because all these teams were really high-powered defensively, maybe not as strong, but they all played at a very high level. So these guys should have that game experience to be ready to go. But who's going to be the leader? How are they going to flow with a new coach? Jedd Fisch did a fantastic job at Arizona. He took them from a bottom feeder program in dire straits and got them to a heck of a spot last year, developing players too. So how does he take that? How does he get this team sort of stabilized after a turbulent offseason with their coach leaving and all that fun stuff and keep them driving toward the bigger goal? One bright spot is Will Rogers is the quarterback. Amazing quarterback at Mississippi State in the air raid offense down there. Coach Leach, rest in peace, got him and turned him into a magician. He obviously struggled last year when they took away from the air raid. They went to a different philosophy at Mississippi State, leading to his transfer to Washington. How does him and Jedd Fisch get on the same page? Jedd's not an air raid guy, but how's he going to get 2 of them going to start speaking the same language and getting players to play? They're going to have receivers. They're going to have skilled guys that Washington are going to show up. But how does Will and Jedd Fisch get on the same page to make sure they are in sync to guide that offense? If they get going, they're going to put points on the board. They'll make it messy for some people, but that is the biggest key. Is shake off last year, new head coach, new quarterback, new players in a lot of spots. Make your own identity, make your own legacy here. We saw it 2 years ago with TCU. They had a magical run to the national title game. They got boat raced by the Dogs. And then last year they didn't make a bowl game. I'm scared that might happen because it was so great and you lost so many players, the bottom could just fall out. But I think Jedd Fisch being a great coach and then having a better quarterback in Will Rogers gives them a chance to really survive and move forward. But that is really what I'm looking at is here's, where you're at. It's going to be interesting up in Seattle, and the Big Ten's going to be a little more tough from a defensive standpoint. How are they also going to be adjusting going forward? This is going to be a lot of new names for all of us to learn as we move forward throughout the year. But it's going to be interesting to see who steps up. Which of those random guys becomes a household name by November.
Right. Remember, too, last year, right before the start of the season, Cameron Davis messed up his leg and wound up out for the whole year. He comes back as well. He was their leading rusher in 22. He's back again. I think he's on his COVID 50-year type of thing as well. You're right. And you say all of these things, that they have talent in the back end of their team. You lose a lot of your guys in the front end, but I think this is almost it's almost a similar situation, maybe not as dire as Arizona that Jedd Fisch took over. I think this team is a year away. I think that you have a stopgap with Will Rogers, if I can get his name out right now, and Cameron Davis. If the offensive line, because they also got lost a lot on the offensive line, they lost a couple of NFL draft picks on the offensive line, the defensive line. Again, when you're playing in Big Ten football, the thing is that you have to do is you got to make sure that you're overpowered and winning the line of scrimmage in this. You got a couple of games where you're going up against some really good offensive and defensive lines in the middle of your season. And if they're not able to protect Will Rogers or they're not able to open up holes for Davis here, this could turn into a very ugly season, similar to what you were saying with TCU. I think these guys have a little more talent this go around than last year's TCU team. Because remember, TCU lost a bunch of talent, very similar to this, but they didn't have the guys on the back end to kind of maybe fill in nicely there. I have a tough stretch here. It's going to go October 12th to November 9th. You go, and I almost threw in October 5th as well, having the Wolverines come to Seattle for a national title rematch there. But I was thinking about this because I really wanted because 3 out of these 4 games are in a row, and we said we wanted to pick a 4-game stretch. You got to go to Iowa, not an easy place to play. And that's going to be the most interesting thing to me is seeing how USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington go into these very difficult environments. Iowa has been a tough place to play for a lot of teams. You go to Indiana, that's a long road, that's an even further road trip the following week, or you do have a bye in between those, so you got to go to Indiana. Then you have USC come to town, and then you got to go back across the country even further to Penn State and play in Happy Valley. Tough locations to play, and I can see that if they don't, their early season, Weber State, Eastern Michigan, Washington State, Northwestern, and going out to Rutgers, they got to go, I would say 5-0 in that situation. You have to have positive momentum building up there going into the Michigan game. So, because the wheels fall off, this could get ugly real quick, fast, and in a hurry.
I liked how you threw in the Iowa and the Indiana travel sports because the flight time, even though it's a bye week, you're still flying across the country. But for me, it's the final 4 games of that season because right now,
right,
if they're right there in the midst, but how do they finish? Because this is going to be a team where who's the leaders on the ball club? Who's going to rise up? Who's actually maybe risen up the depth chart due to injury or due to good play by the time November comes around? But yeah, you get USC, which I got to think they're still going to be competitive. You go to Penn State, Happy Valley, and they haven't given them night whiteout. That's, a shame. And that's on, media companies right there putting in kickoff times in September, making them in June, July, which they should be night kickoffs. And I digress. But then UCLA and at Oregon. And I can guarantee you right now, Dan Lanning, after the past couple matchups for Washington Huskies, he's a little pissed off. And, if he has a chance to put it down on somebody, he's going to put it down on somebody. So you've got to make sure you are, if it's in bowl eligible, or at least have 7 wins by the time, you hit that Oregon game, because you're probably not winning that ball game. 7-5 could be the end of it. So you've got to take care of business and find ways to rally and win. It's going to be a grind with those trips and then finishing. Yeah, you're on the West Coast for the majority of them, but you've got to find ways to beat quality teams. It's going to be an interesting year for the Huskies, and I think you're right about being a year away.
What's the floor for the? Let's talk. I know we've talked ceilings for the other teams first, but again, because we're both saying that Washington's a year away here, what's the floor for them? Where you got them?
I think they're still bowl eligible. I think 6-6. I think they squeak through a bowl game. They're going to beat Indiana, folks. They're going to beat the Hoosiers. They're going to beat Weber State, Eastern Illinois. I think they probably get Rutgers. Is Iowa as great as they have been in the past? We'll find out. Is UCLA going to be good? I don't think so. So, there's a fine way they can squeak out 6 wins. My ceiling is 8 wins. So they're somewhere in the 8-6 range in a win total. They're not going to be winning a Big Ten title. They're not going to be anywhere near that conversation. Max is 8-4. The floor is 6-6. I think they're still a bowl eligible team. I think Jed Fish and Will Rogers would get them there just pure offensively on scoring someone, but it's not going to be what it was last year or the year before.
Right. I'm very hesitant on this one, man. I really am. I almost think you're a little generous. Gosh, I don't want to say because I like Washington. I like the
Santa Claus. We're
Huskies.
just giving out gifts.
I know. I like Washington. I like the Huskies. I like everything that they're doing there. I like everything about them. I don't got them any better than 7-5.
Like it.
Right. And I hate to say this because I think that they're going to struggle on the road mightily outside of that Indiana game because again, okay, Rutgers is better than what people think. They're not amazing, but they're not Indiana here. And again, the fact that you have to go across the entire country, after you play Northwestern in Seattle, and you play a game on a Friday night. It's a short week turnaround. That's going to be a tough game for them to play. Iowa, again, yeah, we don't know what Iowa's offense is going to be, but Kurt Frentz is going to have a defense.
No. We know what Iowa's offense is going to be. Right. Okay, so
Brian Frentz is no longer the OC there.
It's going to be 13 points.
Right, but Kirk Frentz is always going to have a defense there. Indiana, I'll give you that, but going to Penn State, going to Oregon,
those are losses.
At best,
put them down now. Those are losses.
Right, you're in your best case scenario. If you were able to beat Rutgers, you're going 2-3 on the road. I see it 1-4, and then you're going to hope that you're going to pull, just kind of run the table there. I think their worst case scenario, and I'm going to really, really hate to say this, I think their worst case scenario is 5-7 and miss a bowl game. I don't like saying that either.
It's tough though. For their case, you already Michigan game up in Seattle. They might actually have some juice because that Michigan team definitely dealt with a serious roster losses after winning the national championship last year. They're gonna have to develop a new team. But that aside, you're already walking into the year with 2 losses. They're not beating Penn State and not beating Oregon on those 2 road games. So you're already entering the season at 10-2.
Right.
And the rest of it is a coin flip.